Hi, everybody. Welcome to Vinegar Syndrome, last day of May edition.
Yeah, last day of May. I was calling it Reverse May Day.
That's good too. I guess I could change the Facebook invite to reflect that. But yeah, so you want to explain a little bit about the idea behind this?
Yeah, so we were originally going to be having a May Day screening in person before. These were our plans before in the before days. So we never really got to do that May Day screening, but we still had this real urge to do something along that theme. So we figured before May was up, we would do a May Day screening. So these are all movies that we've gathered from the Internet Archive and other sources, all public domain sources that are about labor, human rights, and things that kind of fall into that general bucket.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of keeping with the theme of what Vinegar Syndrome is, where we kind of look through the EPFC archives, and now, obviously since we're all stay at home ordered, it's harder to do that, right? And so archive.org is our new favorite library
it's amazing. It is really an amazing resource. There's a lot on there, and you can create your own account and upload your own content and make your own content publicly available, public domain. I
think everything on there is supposed to be public domain. It looks like some people are not allowing downloads, but I think still technically most of the stuff is in.
And for the occasion, I also wanted to share, it's a block print poster that I felt was appropriately themed that I made a while back. That's a sort of a revolutionary quote, peace to the shacks, war on the palaces.
But yeah, thanks for joining us. I know we're in heavy times now, so yeah. These films aren't all, there's definitely funny moments in them, but yeah, I think these films are all kind of on a serious tip, but obviously all ephemeral films have some sort of, because they're so far in the past, I think have a little bit of humor in them.
There's a little bit of unintentional comedy or kitschiness or something like that,
Oh, cool. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching.
In America, black people are treated very much as the Vietnamese people or any other colonized people, because we're brutalized. The police in our community occupy our area, our community, as a foreign troop occupies territory. And the police are there not to, in our community, not to promote our welfare or for our security and our safety, but they're there to contain us, to brutalize us and murder us because they have their orders to do so. And just as the soldiers in Vietnam have their orders to destroy the Vietnamese people, the police in our community couldn't possibly be there to protect our property because we own no property. They couldn't possibly be there to see that we receive the due process of law for the simple reason that the police themselves deny us the due process of law. And so it's very apparent that the police are only in our community, not for our security, but the security of the business owners in the community, and also to see that the status quo is kept intact.
The revolution has come. It's time to pick up the guns. The revolution has come.
These see it necessary to fight on two fronts. We must liberate the colony as well as stimulate revolution in the mother country. Because I think that the revolutionary students play a great part in saving America. If it were not for the white students, the Black Panther Party would react to the racism in the country and therefore respond with racism. White students have been very interested in the past of the foreign policy of the United States. They're demanding that the United States withdraw from Vietnam, stop brutalizing the Vietnamese people, and we feel that the white students should relate and pay more attention to the colonized situation here of the blacks first, because after all, this is home. And they should, this is not to say that they shouldn't denounce America's treacherous actions abroad. I think they can be done at the same time. That it's just a matter of placing emphasis upon the criminal activities of America here in the homeland.
So the concept is this, basically. The whole black nation has to be put together as a black army. And we're going to walk on this nation, we're going to walk on this racist power structure, and we're going to say to the whole damn government, stick 'em up, motherfucker. This is a hold-up. We come for what's ours.
Copper bosses killed you, Joe. They shot you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe. I didn't die, says Joe. I didn't die. And standing there as big as life, smiling with his eyes, says Joe, but they can never kill. Went on to organize, went on to organize. From San Jose up to Maine, and every mine and mill where working men defend their rights, there you find Joe Hill. It's there you find Joe Hill. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you or me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he. I never died, said he.
¡Arriba los campesinos del Valle del Galáctico! ¡Viva el compañero y hermano César Chávez! ¡Viva! ¡Viva nuestra unión! ¡Viva los campesinos! ¡Viva César Chávez, compañero! ¡Viva los campesinos! ¡Y viva la causa! ¡Y abajo los traidores!
you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man. Says Joe, I didn't die. Says Joe, I didn't die. And standing there as big as life, smiling with his eyes, says Joe, what they can never kill, went on to organize, went on to organize. From San Jose.
Many people that visit us from Europe and Asia and Latin America find it very difficult to understand that in this land of plenty, in this land of democracy, in this land of justice, that we as farm workers and others are still discriminated and don't have the right to organize into unions. The basic right that workers have all over the world. Our movement is under more harassment now than it was 5 years ago. The movement of farm workers throughout the United States is being attacked at almost all of the state legislatures today, trying to enact laws to take away the right to strike at harvest time and to take away the right of boycotting products that are scabbed.
Nosotros trabajamos y ganamos más que tú y nos dan más atención. Con un niño entre sus brazos, único fruto de tu para comprarle zapatos, para mandarlo a la escuela, y no lo mandas, porque Abati te está robando 35 por hora, 35 centavos por hora te está robando. A ti te está pagando.
It's very true that the farm workers, a number of them have not been able to come in just because there are many factors involved. Now they are too poor and they cannot really afford to miss 2 days or 3 days job work, because you see these people have been getting just a small amount of money for their pay, and they have kids to support, and their first responsibility is to feed their kids, and so they could not afford to stay too long. But it does not mean that because they were out or they went back to work somewhere else that they don't like the union. See, that's not the idea of being out. But it was an economic factor that really had forced them to get out. And then the union was not able to, could not afford to pay their bills.
Les estás pidiendo única y exclusivamente el sueldo mínimo, 2 pesos por hora, y no te los quiere pagar. ¿Y por qué no te sales? ¿Por qué no te vienes con nosotros? Salte, hazle la huelga, salte 3 días y regresas a trabajar con él mismo, ya con médico, con medicina y también con sanatorio para ti y para tu familia. Salte, compañero, no tengas miedo, unirse a la fuerza de los trabajadores. No tenemos más que los brazos para hacer producir el campo.
My name is Jim Hamilton. I live in Raleigh, California. I've been interested in the farm labor problem perhaps for 10 years. I've been active in local politics for that long.
You think Cesar Chavez is a communist?
I doubt very seriously whether he is. I think perhaps he runs with a lot of them. This has been documented. If you want to read the 14th report.
What do you think about Cesar Chavez?
I think that possibly maybe the guy has good intentions, but I think he's a stooge for other people.
Cool.
And I think probably the AFL-CIO, but I would suggest you read the State Senate fact-finding 14th report on un-American activities in California. This gives a pretty good rundown of it.
Cesar Chavez.
I think that they ought to be ready. You know, it'll show the
to what extent the grower community in California has been trying to destroy the union. They got a Senate subcommittee of the state of California to come and investigate us about our communistic activities. And the report has been read by many people, and all he says is that well, you know, that we're not communists and that we're a legitimate organization, and, you know. And it's not our purpose really to fight growers, only we must fight them at times because they do not want to recognize the right of workers to have their own organization. You see, many growers in this area and all over the country have the right to create their own unions, associations, marketing orders, all these things to help themselves. The moment we want to do something for ourselves, we find great opposition, and we cannot permit that. We are free men, and we are free women as workers. We have the right to have our own union, our own association. The growers also, because they cannot stop us, because they cannot stop the great thrust of the movement, are now trying to change the law to make it impossible for us to do the thing that we must do, and to do it in such a way as we've always preached to everyone, to do it in good faith, to do it legally, and to do it non-violently. And the growers are not trying to use the gimmick of passing legislation to stop us from doing our work.
My name is Lionel Steinberg. I'm president of David Friedman and Company of Thermal. I felt that organization of farm workers was inevitable, but I felt that some of the people surrounding Caesar were inexperienced and were more concerned with sociological change and political change rather than in some form of true trade unionism. There was some feeling, both warranted and unwarranted, on the part of some of the growers who felt that the ultimate goal of some of the folks in UFWOC was actually agrarian reform and possibly land confiscation rather than bona fide trade unionism and organization. I didn't share that view with the other growers, but some of the activities of some of the folks in the group were frightening, and so far, fortunately, our relationship has been excellent, and we feel that the Chavez leadership is making a great effort to treat the growers fairly and to make some headway in solving our mutual problems.
The employer community is paranoid about us, and that's a great advantage to us because we can, we can just go boo, and scare half of them. I think that really what they're saying is that we want to see, with poverty, with living in rural areas, with decades and decades of not having union, problems have been accumulating as a reservoir, a dam made up of workers' problems. And so we don't only fight to get a contract, but we got to go fight the school, the police department, the welfare department, the hospital, everywhere, to try and get the justice back for the worker that he didn't have because he was poor, unorganized, and no political power. And we're just doing our work. If a member, we're making a very simple extension. A member of the union has a right to be represented in the farm by a contract, by collective bargaining. And then on those things that have nothing to do with collective bargaining, but affect him as a human being, the union's responsibility is to go in there and help him do that too, And so we make that extension, and this seems to unravel the growers a lot. But I really think that behind all of their talk, it isn't that. What really they don't see, what they would like, what they don't like, basically, period, is a union. And our union, perhaps, is the lowest one on the list,
¡Viva la huelga!
¡Viva César Chávez! ¡Viva la Causa!
¡Viva la huelga!
¡Viva! ¡Arriba la raza unida! ¡Viva! ¡Viva la voz!
¡Vénganse!
¡Es tiempo de unirnos, compañeros! ¡Vénganse, compañeros!
Oh yes, I've been in a strike before. In 1948, that was one of the biggest strikes that I've ever been, and that was the asparagus strike in Stockton. And the trouble was that there was no really communication established between the groups of workers. They were segregated by nationalities and races. And so while the Filipinos were striking, then the other nationalities, races like the Mexicans and other groups have been scabbing on us. And that's the difference. But today, we try to get everybody who works in the farm.
Union board member Philip Veracruz.
As far as the history of farm workers movement in the United States, these unions since 1880, that was started by the Chinese. And then you got the Japanese, then you got the European minorities, then you have the Filipinos and Mexicans later on. And these people were, these people organized the unions according to their races. And so that's why it was very weak. And so therefore it was not effective. But this time, the Filipinos and Mexicans got together and show an example that when you get into a union, all people who are involved in that kind of job should be in. We have Filipinos and Mexicans, and we have Arabs, we have Puerto Ricans, we have Anglos, we got blacks. Well, we got almost every race now.
The average life expectancy of a farm worker is somewhere around 49 years. And this is it's known among us, you know. We don't accept it, but we've come to realize that we're cheated out of at least 20 good years of life, you know. And now that that's probably the worst form of exploitation, is taking those productive years out of our lives because of the exploitation and because of all of the inhumanities that are committed against the workers. We have some very special problems. For instance, we have a very high rate of pesticide poisoning. We have a high accident rate. And then we have a problem that seems to affect many, many farm workers. This is a back problem. We're sure this comes from stoop labor. It comes from years and years of doing that kind of work. No one knows how to cure it. It's the kind of problem that incapacitate a worker, yet he's not able to receive any of the few benefits that may be around for him. That plane is on its way to unload pesticides right now. Those are the sprayer planes, and you see them in increasing numbers. You'll see this valley at 5:30 in the morning, when the wind is at its lowest velocity. And all the planes are up, and you've got a blanket of pesticides all over the valley. You can smell it, you can taste it, you can feel it. The more pesticide is used now, and the more toxic pesticides are developed, the more we as human beings suffer. See, agriculture is not being mechanized to the extent that some people think it is. Most of the machines coming into agriculture today are not the machines that mechanize the operation, but rather they're what we call harvester aids. They still require hand labor. See, a machine by itself cannot do the job. The machine needs a little help. Take the case of tomatoes as an example. For a number of years, the machine was perfected to the point where they couldn't go beyond that. But it still wasn't good enough to pick tomatoes, so they went and then they produced a plant that developed a tomato that could take all the beating that is required by the machine. Well, they kept what they did to the tomato, they gave her a thicker skin, less juice, and you've got a round tomato. It's very red, but it tastes like alfalfa. And so what happens is that the consumer is saying no. That's why, for instance, when you go to the markets and you get a Mexican tomato, it has a distant flavor, right? It tastes like the old tomato that we used to raise in our own backyard. It tastes like the old tomato we used to buy 20 years ago, because it's still being raised in the same form. It's a genuine tomato that appeals to our palate. The synthetic tomato that was developed not for taste, not for nutrition, but is developed to meet the needs of the machine is a different thing. If machine comes in and makes it easier for an employer to produce more food, then two things ought to happen. One is that food ought to be made available to hungry people at a lower price so that hungry people can live. And then it also means that if the employer can bring a machine in and save a lot of money because of technology, then we want to participate in savings because of technology. We're not against progress, but we say that technology should work not only for the employer, but for us, for many reasons, but mostly because of reasons of social justice. Farm workers do not have unemployment insurance, and we're pledged this year on an all-out fight to get unemployment insurance so that we can help when farm workers are not working. They should have the right, as any other worker in America has today, to go to the Department of Employment and get a weekly compensation check so that they can live and live in not only in decency but also be able to live with themselves, be able to live with their families, and not have to depend on a handout or on charity. And that we pledge you that we want to do that. And also, we want to pledge, we have not forgotten the orange worker. And the orange worker has as much right to have a union as anyone else. And we want to thank you for being patient, and you know and we know that we're going to come here sooner or later, but maybe sooner.
The boycott is important because we try to be building a union by the usual way of picketing. But because of the supply and demand in the labor market, doesn't work because of the supply of cheap labor from Mexico and other neighboring states that are brought by the contractors and growers into this area. And so when the local people walk out, well, the farmers could supply even 2 or 3 times as many as those who walk out.
We have to start organizing in every state where the politicians are trying to take away our sacred right of striking and boycotting. And so with your help and the money that we're realizing from this event is going to be used to take the movement into other states. We have to go to Texas and Florida and Mississippi and the Carolinas. Yeah. And we also have to go to New York because, believe it or not, there are a lot of farm workers in New York, and the working conditions and wages in New York stink.
I've lived in this neighborhood for about 2 years now, and I'm used to the sound of the elevated train and of the streets where old cars sit around in the gutters, and in the vacant lots the kids play. Some people might think it's colorful, you know, but when you live here, you call it something else, because poorness doesn't look good, or smell good, or feel good, especially not when you're sick, not when your body hurt, and you want to make it well. It took a while, but we've got a good answer to sickness in this part of New York. It's part of a new idea that's going on in other cities too, you know, all over the country. Here in the Bronx, we call it the Montefiore Neighborhood Health Center, where people from my neighborhood can come to have their sickness treated and their hurt made well.
You are entering a new world of health care. It draws upon the same science and uses the same instruments and equipment that health services traditionally do, but yet in its philosophy and its practice, it is different in some startling and significant ways. Here in New York's Montefiore Neighborhood Health Center, and in its counterparts in other American cities and towns, this concept of care has profoundly affected both the health professional and the patient. Senor Gallardo there never had a doctor before. At least not one who knew his name and his medical history.
Have you had much swelling in your legs?
Yeah, I used to swell up my legs.
On anyway to church. Before I got to the church, child, I was hurting so bad I'd turn around and come back 2-3 times.
Mrs. Skinner's getting on in years, and it never entered her mind that she'd be getting so much interested attention in a place devoted to medical care.
So saying don't kill me, I don't cry.
You know, have something to do with your heart.
Mrs. Hitchcock complains about a lot of things, but she never thought complaining about her medical care would make a difference. But it is.
So I took the pills, but every time I'd take the pills, instead of my arm stop hurting, it would hurt, and then my chest would hurt. Talk about.
And just a few short months ago, it certainly never occurred to many of these people that they'd be helping shape the entire way in which their neighborhood's health care was to be offered. But they are, and the medical people are listening. This is the story of a new kind of comprehensive health care, and the way it is being offered in 36 American cities and towns. It is the story of a unique and creative approach to the health needs of its consumers, which goes where they are, listens when they talk, answers when they question, and perhaps most important of all, accepts their advice on how it can best serve their needs. It is the story of a healthcare philosophy which could well apply not just to the poor, but to everyone, and affect the whole approach of medicine in the future. Right now, hundreds of thousands of Americans are utilizing it every day through their neighborhood health center.
I'm Dr. Roger Eggeberg, Dean of the University of Southern California School of Medicine. This film describes new ways of providing health care for the poor, whether they live in the country or the city, by means of neighborhood health centers. In the past, and in many places today, health care for the poor has been inadequate. For instance, hard to obtain, impersonal, fragmented. In that kind of a setting, quality often suffered. And today there are probably 30 million people who are not receiving the kind of care we all deserve. Now, with people in their neighborhoods working together with professionals in the planning and operation of these centers, there are some new ideas and new directions that we should all be aware of. So let's take a closer look at some of the problems and what neighborhood health centers are doing about them.
If you're poor, poverty poor, and you live in places like these, sickness can be a lifelong blight, a kind of vicious circle described by the physician who said, "The sick get poorer and the poor get sicker." If you're poor and sick, there are some mighty discouraging barriers between you and good medical care. Barriers like transportation.
Well, I've been standing out here for half an hour waiting for the bus to come along. If you miss one, no telling how long you have to wait. And then you get to the hospital, you gotta wait some more.
Well, it's very hard to get to the hospital when you have to get your kids all dressed, to get yourself dressed, and you're very, very sick. Then you have to walk several blocks to get the bus. So I never go until I'm nearly dead before I go, or even before I take the kids, because it's too difficult.
Add long distances, no predictable way to get there or get home later, and only the most serious illness could drag you out. And once you were there, what then? Physicians and other medical people have done a supremely difficult job under immense pressures in the country's emergency rooms and clinics. But as so many physicians know, emergency rooms just weren't designed for that job.
Well, emergency rooms were designed to handle acute catastrophes of all kinds. And when the medical or surgical need is of top urgency, they and their highly trained staffs function smoothly and efficiently. The team in emergency rooms all over the country function with supreme skill when they're presented with the kind of emergencies for which this place was designed.
But the role of the emergency room has changed over the years, and now people bring routine problems here. If you had to take 3 buses to get here, or a $10 taxi ride, you're very likely to wait until you're really sick, or $10 sick, as they used to say in Watts. Unfortunately, being $10 sick often meant not getting well very fast, as Dr. Egeberg knows so well.
Underlying all of this is the inescapable fact that there are hardly enough doctors to go around as medicine is now practiced in this country. To add 30 million patients and 15 hours of extra work each week to every doctor's workload would throw the whole medical system into chaos. The fact is, we need to explore new ways of delivering health care. Health care to everybody, not just the poor, and this means using as many people as we can to extend the hands of the doctors, something that is being tried in the neighborhood health centers.
The health problems that plague the city ghettos, the migrant camps, the poor wherever they were, concerned physicians and health professionals all over the country, and exploration for creative solutions was top priority. And with the help of the Office of Economic Opportunity, the search became known as the Health Right Programs. And so it began. In the city ghettos and country towns, something was happening. Members of the health professions, working closely with the OEO, had begun to implement the idea of community medicine in action. The idea was to deliver high-quality, accessible, comprehensive, one-door care where the whole family's health needs could be met. They called it the Neighborhood Health Center. And the neighborhood was so involved in it that in little towns like El Viso, California, they built it themselves. There's more than just hammer and saw participation here. This is community participation, because this group, voluntarily building its own center, has a unity of strength that can address other problems too. And as they break for lunch, they may well talk about things like housing and education and welfare. Community worker Tom Uredale puts it this way.
Through the experience of attacking a specific problem and working with one another, they've begun to see the relationship of such things as health problems to the lack of housing, lack of education, a lack of response by the institutions in this society that so dramatically affect their lives. And not only do they have, at least some of them have, for the first time, a positive image of themselves, but they're beginning to see ways that they can move, possibly, to change some of the other areas of their life.
So, with the vigorous and necessary help of community workers like Tom Uredale, the medically deprived people of communities like El Viso were helping themselves. A health center in this neighborhood? That's right. And it wasn't even faintly going to resemble a chilly, impersonal hospital emergency room. This was going to be accessible care. And if they had anything to say about it, it was going to be given in the best-looking building in town.
The centers didn't have to be magnificent or even elaborate to begin with. San Francisco's first quarters were in house trailers, drawn up around this attractive courtyard. But they did have to be convenient and comfortable and easy of access, with pleasant waiting rooms in which neighborhood people would feel welcome and at home. Poor people aren't so far outside the mainstream of medical care that they don't want what other people want. Perhaps most significantly, they want what health professionals themselves want. They want private offices.
All right, now you tell me, is this comfortable?
No problem.
Has you got any calls?
They want quiet examining rooms.
Open it wide.
They want comfortable conference areas where a warm and lasting relationship can be established between health professionals and patients.
Buenas tardes, señor Alvarado.
Buenas tardes, doctor.
Yo soy el doctor Consiglieri, voy a ser su obstetra con el cuidado prenatal.
I find that in this doctor-patient relationship, we are able to establish more than just the ordinary doctor-patient relationship, but rather that of a friendship in which we're not interested only in the pregnancy, but in the whole family. And I feel that centers such as this should not be only interested in providing health care, but also in raising the standard of living and giving hope for future generations to come.
You see, a fundamental and most important concept of the health center is to offer patients family care medical service through an approach with tremendous implications for the whole medical field. It's called team medicine, and it's offered by a highly organized group whose members respond to patient needs, both medical and social. The typical health team is made up of physicians, usually an internist and pediatrician, though frequently including an obstetrician too, a dentist, a public health nurse, and one or more new health specialists called family health workers. When a family registers at the center, it is assigned to a health team which will be responsible for all of its health needs. So it's possible for an entire family to come in at once, and each member be seen by the appropriate person on their team.
In order to protect your...
Oh, boy. A couple of cavities.
Wow. Yeah, put your tongue back, honey.
It's a teeth that's growing.
And an extra tooth, right.
And while his father is getting attention just down the hall, young Spanky is getting his pediatric workup.
As a member of the team, the pediatrician has the unique opportunity to use his pediatric training to best advantage. He doesn't wind up spending half of his time as a clerk or a record taker or social worker or as a nurse or receptionist. All of the members of the team contribute as co-equals with their own specialized area of expertise. In my particular case, I've found over the months that more and more I have learned to rely upon the other members of the team to do their part of the job, and so I've had more time to concentrate on what I can do best to help the entire family and the patient in their total medical care.
Then let me know and I'll get the social worker to talk to you and maybe give you some help, because he's at a pretty rough age right now without a diet, and the diet may be a little bit too much for him to handle.
I think, as far as I can see from this picture, that the left...
For the team's physicians, many centers offer the convenient advantage of in-center specialist consultants. Specialists like this gynecologist at the Montefiore Center, who is available to consult on specific patient problems, or to refer a patient to if circumstances require.
Now, when have you had your last period?
I went the 12th of last month.
12th of last month. Have they been always regular, your periods?
Yes.
And how long do they last usually?
5 days.
From what
Psychiatric consultations are also possible in the New York Center, and team physicians take full advantage of the opportunity to talk over specific case problems.
Reinforce this connection.
Bite and swallow. That's right, honey. Okay.
One of the most important team members at any center is the dentist, whose facilities are almost always busy.
Okay, honey, shall we practice? And we'll show you how we brush the teeth.
Here at the center, dental care is an important aspect of family health care. Our main consideration, of course, is clinical dentistry. However, we feel it very important to begin a program of preventive dentistry with instructions in diet and nutrition. We begin our preventive dentistry program with the basics, and that is instruction in home hygiene and home care. Our assistants here are trained to continue the program by further instructing the families and the children, especially upon each visit.
Hold the toothbrush and do it yourself. Okay? Put it up, then down, up, down.
For incentive, your own toothbrush with your own name on it.
Jose. There you are. Now take your toothbrush, Jose, and take it home with you.
While the family health team makes maximum use of physicians and dentists, each team also draws upon the nurse with public health skills, who knows and is known by her patients in a very special way.
This mother and I have built up a tremendous relationship. I know her family. I've been to her home. She knows the doctors and the family health workers. We're her team, hers alone. I mean, it's people saying, you're that special to us. You know, we're your special team, and we're interested in you not only in terms of the medical aspects, but how are your children doing in school?
Ms. Thompson today is going to tell us how to take an oral temperature while you're doing it.
We said that it was fundamental to center philosophy to involve people from the neighborhood in creative new health roles. And certainly one of the most creative is the idea of the family health worker. The family health worker is typically a woman, though there are expanding opportunities for men in the role, and always a person who lives in the neighborhood and understands its needs, its people, and its community resources.
If the patient is unconscious, you never take an oral temperature.
When they learn such health skills as care of the bedfast, checking vital signs, first aid, and elements of anatomy, and pass some rigorous examinations to demonstrate their knowledge, these family health workers are integrated into the functioning health care team.
Come in sometime within the next couple of weeks.
Consulting closely with a public health nurse, who often serves as team coordinator, the family health worker is given her day's assignments, which can include everything from visiting a bedfast coronary patient to visiting City Hall to get action on a housing violation. For family health workers like Raquel Martinez in New York's Bronx, patient care often begins by visiting in the home, apartment, or tenement. There she can check the entire family in their home environment, not just the mother who is pregnant, but also the children, for whom she may well suggest things like diet changes or better oral hygiene. At periodic intervals, the family health worker makes an appointment for the family at the center. Here in Health Unit number 3, this patient and her children will be given all of the medical attention they require. For the mother, that means the obstetrician.
is all right. The baby's in good position, and we'll probably expect her to deliver towards the end of the month.
Ella dice que todo está bien con tu embarazo y que ella espera que para...
Please ask Miss Santana how she's been feeling since the last time I saw her.
El doctor quiere saber cómo te sientes desde la última vez que te vio.
Me he podido sentir en algunos achaques mejor. En cuanto a la vejiga, pues, más o menos igual.
And that's the way it's working at centers all across the country. Team medicine, with the family health worker bringing the doctor what he's lost, the ability to see patients in the context of their home and family, and what he never had, a cultural bridge into the community.
Mr. Belfort, I understand that you're walking now.
Listen again as the family health worker responds to the needs of a patient who happens also to be a neighbor and a friend.
It catches me right in, you know, right in there. Then it goes right on around, right on up under my rib, come right on up it right to the thick part of my shoulder. I don't like to go to doctors too much. So I've never been no sickly person in my life. And I've come to this clinic more than I've ever went to a doctor in my life.
You done gained some.
And so the patients come to their neighborhood health center. There aren't any complicated eligibility requirements for the patients, no lengthy forms to fill out in cold, unfriendly environments. Top priority goes to serving people. And always patients are seen as people whose health needs are bound up with the other circumstances of their lives. Young Salvador there isn't just an injured wrist. He's a little boy whose mother kept a dangerous washing machine. And one of the first things the center did was to send someone out to his house to share some safety techniques.
Have you had much of a cold?
Senor Gallardo there isn't just a heart patient. His doctor knows that he's the head of a large family, and it's important for him to have an income-producing job, a factor which will be taken into account in his treatment.
Sometimes, not all the time, just sometimes.
Yes,
Even Mrs. Hitchcock, who complains a lot, is seen as a tired wife and a mother of 5 who must be listened to and responded to with attention and respect, not only because she needs to ventilate her feelings, but because it allows the center to see where they may not be meeting patient needs.
Doesn't hurt. I said, look, this is my body.
So they listen to their patients both in the center and on the job. If a man can't get off work to come to the center, a center worker will go to him, even in the middle of a plowed tomato field. Can we help you with your family's health problems? That's what they want to know. On the job or at home, center workers go out where the patients are to tell them about the health services available, and they tell it in the language of the people.
Si no me quería hacer alguna pregunta sobre también.
Sí, todos han estado bien hasta ahora.
Hasta ahora, bueno. Sabe que vamos, entonces sí arreglamos la clase para cuidar a los niños, para darles primeros auxilios, para...
If they live too far to make the trip themselves, the center bus will go get them. The idea that the center must be accessible was top priority from the beginning, and nobody is ever denied care because he lacks transportation. Accessible medicine? It's as accessible as your own backyard to this elderly couple in King City, California. Yes, they could come into the center for treatment, but old Mrs. Bonatti has always had a fear of hospitals, and injections under your own grape arbor aren't anywhere near as threatening. Outreach, bringing medicine to the consumer, to the community, academic words to describe what really goes on in the Bonatti's backyard. And their appreciation takes a form sanctioned by tradition. Call it corny at your peril. This gift is given with sincerity and gratitude, and it's received the same way.
Things that's good and worthwhile.
From the outset, the health center idea was based on the concept of community participation. that residents in the center's neighborhood cared about the kind of service they would have, and that they must have an influential voice in determining the way in which care was delivered. For center directors like Dr. Rodney Powell and his staff in Watts, community involvement means working with his health council, a management group made up of concerned community members selected by their neighbors.
I haven't had an opportunity to work in clinics, and many of them, we know that.
Mrs. Moore, I think one of the biggest problems is the lack of understanding what the team really means, and the person who plays the key role has not had the kind of training that I think you prescribed for him initially, and that's the neighborhood health agent. These are people who are serving in that interpretive, communicative advocacy role back to the teams, and no one pays any attention to him. He's still not accepted. The doctors regard him as someone less than a professional, and the people, such as the social workers and the public health nurses, still haven't accepted his role.
That's because he's dealing from a position of no power.
What do you mean by that?
That he's dealing from a powerless position, and that's why he's not recognized.
Well, that's the conflict. Let me identify it right here. The conflict is that we can get people in who can do this. In my experience, the Community Health Council is one of the vital channels of communication that serves our center. You just can't get to the heart of things by using statistical surveys. You've got to get the community itself to identify its health needs and wants. The consumer input is absolutely essential, and it must be in the context of full partnership. We get consumer participation from the patients themselves, the employees at the center who are community residents, and most significantly, the community residents who are members of the Community Health Council, the board of directors who set program policy for the center.
A doctor's supposed to be able to make contact with anybody regardless to the level of the person.
At the same time,
the implications for the future of this new kind of health care are complicated and intriguing. In all of their activities, whether medical, dental, pharmaceutical consultation, or laboratory, the centers work with a medical institution in their area, usually a medical school, teaching hospital, public health department, or established group practice. A new way to deliver health care? Yes. In a great many important ways it is. And here in these centers, with their ties to the communities they serve, they are training neighborhood people to take their part in it. The training programs include not only dental assistants, family health workers, laboratory technicians, X-ray technologists, and other health specialists, but also key punch operators, switchboard operators, record specialists, and secretaries. When their training is complete, these people will be equipped to fill needs at the center itself, or go out into their community and work in other facilities. By creating new wage earners, the neighborhood health centers are helping develop the financial health of the community as well as its physical health.
It's new, and it's challenging, and it's frustrating too, because the problems aren't all solved yet by any means. There are still patients whose needs aren't being entirely satisfied, still health workers not entirely at home with this new concept of care. The system is evolutionary, and in its evolving, it is inevitably confronting tough and complicated issues, such as recruitment and changing professional roles and others. But the neighborhood health center idea is well launched, and its implications are far-reaching. As a flexible system which emphasizes full involvement of the consumer himself, the health center principle may well be useful not just as medicine for the poor, but for medicine as a whole.
In King City, California, where the Southern Monterey County Medical Group operates the center, Dr. Len Hughes Andrus and his colleagues have successfully proved that private group practice can work closely with government agencies to fill gaps in health care with new services and manpower.
We, I hope, represent a real working partnership between private physicians and government working towards the same goal. And so far, we've had excellent relations with Washington, and we've had a real thrilling experience of bringing better medical care to people who never before have had adequate medical care in their lives. In the development of our program here, the OEO encouraged us to develop any innovations that we were capable of through our own initiative and imagination. And I feel that if this grant ended tomorrow, that we would never go back to practicing medicine exactly the same as we did prior to the grant, even with our private patients, because we've learned techniques and used techniques of delivering medical care that have changed our entire pattern of practice for the better, I'm convinced.
It's a beginning, and while it's far from perfect, it's light years away from what was there before. This family health worker is an expert on that.
You have to live in this neighborhood. You have to really be here to know what it was like before. And what a wonderful thing now has happened for the people's health. The center has not solved all the problems of schools and houses and trashy sidewalks. But for my friends and my neighbors and all the people who live here, to them this center is a very great thing. And talking for me, it is a great thing too.
When you built your center yourself, as they did in Alviso, on opening day you come with special prayer and thanksgiving.
Conservemos la unidad que el maestro nos mandó. Donde hay guerra que haya paz, donde hay odio que haya amor.
Opening day, the beginning of something important. From this day, the people of Alviso will have a health center of their own. And it is their own, in the special way that anything you build yourself belongs to you. Community action? This entire health center is evidence that there is such a thing, and that it can work. Perhaps it's more visible here in Alviso than in some other areas where the ideal may be more difficult to obtain, but it can be done because they did it. So, in future days, when they come here to have their sickness treated and their hurts made well, you can understand it if they feel very much at home. That's part of what it means to have a center.
Today that fully automated procedures have been applied to the main assembly line. It now takes 2 men to do the job that required a labor force of over 100 men. The company's newly automated production line has increased output at the Burbank plant by 127%. The expected increase in natural gas prices is still pending final approval in Washington. And at the same time in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a family feud over TV programs was settled abruptly. John Harvey shot his father in the leg after Mr. Harvey had interrupted his son's viewing by placing his foot through the screen of the family TV set. And that concludes the morning news brought to you by the Hessep Pharmaceutical Company, the makers of Easy Sleep.
1 1/8, up 3/8. American Telephone 172 3/4, up 3/4. American Airlines 17 3/8, up 1/2. American Potash 38 3/4, up 3/8. American Tobacco 77 3/4, up 1 1/4. Anaconda 42 1/4, up 1/4. Armour 12 3/8, up 1/8. Atchison 18 7/8, up 1/2. Baltimore and Ohio 25 1/2, up 5/8. Bethlehem Steel 39, up 1/4. $77 3/4, up 1 1/4. Anaconda 42 1/4, up 1/4. Armour.
Most of the freeways inbound are flowing at about 70% capacity. We'll be standing by here above the freeways in the KLRB helicopter, and we'll bring you another report when traffic reaches its expected peak. Operation Traffic Watch now returns you to the station, and Herb Ronson with Freeway Frolic.
Thank you, Bill. We'll be hearing from you again later. And now back to the musical portion of our show today, bringing you recordings from the Roaring Twenties.
Hello? Miss Nelson, this is, Wilford McClellan. I wonder if you'd stop by on your way to the office.
Okay.
Can you hold the line a minute?
Mr. Bartlett speaking. Edgar Davis with Acme. I'm calling to find out if your policy regarding the splitting of issues. New York. quotes out at 23, which is a bit more than we can afford to.
Engineering.
Hello? No, we couldn't possibly arrange it for today. I'm sorry, why don't you call back tomorrow?
Nelson, we need to take immediate action on the option that we muffin Mrs. Paget. See this taken care of.
A memo to Harry Schaefer. In regards to Mrs. Paget's account, contact her and find out if she is interested in buying at the current market price, less our commission.
Mr. Nelson, I picked your car up 2 hours ago and have the tune-up finished, but your starting trouble comes from a broken choke element. Can't have it till 6:30, I'm afraid.
That's the craziest thing I ever heard. That's a new car. Okay, whatever it needs, I'll be by at 6:30.
A new rectifier, ma'am, and she'll be like new.
Hello, doctor. I've been waiting for your call.
Well, I've looked over the results of those tests we made. I don't see anything organically wrong.
So most preparations only lessen the gastric pain. Danazol acts 6 ways.
If you don't feel better by the 1st of next week, give me a call.
Say, gang, be the first in your block to get this exact replica of the Navy intercontinental missile. Be the first to launch one in your neighborhood. Have your mom ask the grocer for Super Energy Corn Friskies.
Look here, Dalton, I've told you before. This here hotel's reserved for us ranchers when we're in town. Now, as any fool can see, I'm a rancher and I'm in town. Here. Now it's time for another exciting episode in the adventures of Anthony.
The strongest men break when they try to battle with fate. Now let me see. Yes, you'll need a bit of tailoring, that's the first thing. And then, Tony, did you hear me? Anthony! Huh? I said you needed completely new and different clothes. I shall arrange with my tailors to...
You remind me of Mr. Bonifeather.
The first time I met him, he thought I needed clothes, too. Oh, and did you? As I recall, I was stark naked. My boy, you haven't stopped to figure out yet that life is just a series of sensations. Some to be desired, others to be avoided. That's all that matters.
All right, Marty. It's time for bed.
For instance, at this moment, you and I are riding comfortably in a carriage, enjoying ourselves, while over there in that courtyard, the poor...
About the headaches and the hair falling out and those nitroglycerin.
From our binge. Do you mind putting the light out?
No. Georgie, we're going to go places together. I'm going to work hard for you and give you all the things you should have. Make you proud of me.
I have everything I want. And I am proud of you. Very proud.
You weren't afraid, were you?
No. I'm never afraid when I'm with you.
Then why should I be? By the way, have I told you lately that I adore you?
Only 3 times in the last 10 minutes.
Well, that's enough. No use making a glutton out of you. It was nice seeing your friend, wasn't it?
Very nice.
Was his news important?
Might have been, once.
But now?
fighting to cleanse the world of ancient evil, ancient ill. In this war of survival, we must keep before our minds not only the evil things we fight against, but the good things we are fighting for. We are fighting today for security, for progress, and for peace, not only for ourselves, but for all men. Not only for one generation, but for all generations.
When reconversion got underway, pay envelopes were thinner. Bill Turner took a cut of $15. No more overtime. Take-home pay was cut, but the rent wasn't. Nor the price of shoes. Nor the price of food. Bill thought of the promises made during the war of C.E. Wilson, president of General Electric.
After the war is won, take-home pay on a 40-hour-a-week basis must eventually represent the higher levels of pay that now prevail.
No, things weren't what Bill had hoped for. Roosevelt was gone, and his enemies were on hand to claim the victory. Pay cuts at home, oppression abroad. Bill didn't like it. The UE is a good-sized outfit. Over 600,000 men and women organized in hundreds of locals. In Bill's local, the cut in take-home pay was on everybody's mind. Other locals felt the same way, and the union asked for an increase of $2 a day. The companies claimed they were unable to pay it unless price ceilings were hoisted. But UE had the facts. Let's take a look at a refrigerator that retailed at $169 in 1939. Here's where the money went. Raw materials and depreciation. Advertising. Distribution costs and profits. Manufacturer's profits. Against all this are the production labor costs, $17.40. Since 1939, the margin of profit had increased. OPA granted an increase of $7.77. The workers were producing more per hour and saving the company an estimated $3.66 per refrigerator. The UE demand of $2 a day would only mean $4.35 more in labor costs. Even with this increase, the Federal Trade Commission estimated that in the first year of full production, profits on refrigerators would be nearly $7 million more than in 1939. Furthermore, the companies were in possession of tremendous wartime profits. No, prices did not have to go up, except for the greed of the companies. Another company propaganda angle was that wage increases would cause inflation, because the workers, with their war bonds, would have too much money. Here again, UE had the facts. A government survey tells the truth about which families have what savings. Nearly 2/3 have only 7%. All this is held by 10% of the people. In other words, the majority of people have so little that a week or two of unemployment or an illness wipes out the savings. As Bill pointed out, the layoffs during reconversion and the reduction in take-home pay meant big trouble to millions of families. What the companies left unsaid was how they rated the United States Treasury. Republicans and Southern Democrats, by wartime tax bills, guaranteed profits to all corporations through 1946, even if they were not producing. President Roosevelt called the bill relief for the greedy, not for the needy. In effect, an anti-labor Congress gave a huge strike fund to big business. No wonder UE President Fitzgerald had to report no progress on his wage negotiations.
The electrical manufacturers have refused to bargain in good faith. In other basic industries, too, such as auto and steel, the employers are tough and unreasonable. As Phil Murray says, there is a conspiracy by big business against American democracy. To understand this conspiracy, we must remember what happened after World War I in 1919. At that time, to meet the high cost of living, labor unions asked for wage increases. The answer was a lesson. Employers mobilized the full power of the government against the unions. Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer said he was after communists. Under cover of red baiting, he and the employers crippled the trade unions. In 2 years, 1/3 of the membership was lost. Big business was in control. It ran the government. It brought us to 1929. To this, and this, and this.
They want no get-rich-quick era of bogus prosperity, which will end for them in selling apples on a street corner.
Roosevelt is dead and a reactionary Congress has taken over. Big business thinks it can repeat 1919. We in the CIO want industrial peace. But if big business wants to take America for a ride again, we intend to fight.
Bill Turner voted to strike. One of the ballots that rolled up a majority of 83% in favor of action. the locals voted to fight for food and clothing and rent against the company's drive for undue profits and fatter dividends. The company's greed can only be realized by knowing all the facts about them. Here's what Bill and the UE were up against. The plant where Bill worked employed 15,000 people. It was only one of the General Electric network, employing 125,000 workers. Westinghouse employed 75,000. General Motors Electrical Division, 25,000. Together, they control 50% of the industry, and in December 1942, the Department of Justice brought General Electric and Westinghouse into court on charges of monopolizing fluorescent lamps. Also in 1942, a grand jury slapped General Electric with a criminal indictment, charging that General Electric, along with other companies,
did unlawfully, willfully, and feloniously conspire, combine, confederate, and agree together to defraud the United States by making collusive, fraudulent, identical, and non-competitive bids at unreasonably high prices.
But this is not all. In spite of war, these companies operate internationally through subsidiaries, stock participation, and cartel agreements with various other companies. IG Farben Industrie, Allgemeine Elektrizität Gesellschaft, Siemens Schuckenwerke, Siemens Halske, Opel, Fried Group Antigesellschaft, Tokyo Shibaura, Mitsubishi Electrical Engineering Company, Westinghouse Electric Company of Japan, Compagnia Generale di Elettricità, Magrini Società Anonima, and many more all over the world. Internationally, as well as nationally, profit, big profit, is the battle cry. A General Electric Krupp agreement sent the price of tungsten carbide from $50 a pound to $453 a pound. This monopoly price kept production low. The United States government cracked down with a criminal indictment. But the damage had been done. Tungsten carbide was one of the great bottlenecks in war production. On the other side of the world, Kwanzo Tanaka, chairman of Mitsubishi, announced that part of their profits had been set aside for Westinghouse. Where did this money come from? This is but a part of what Bill and the UE had to face. These companies have powerful connections in other industries which were also fighting the labor movement. The nature and power of these connections staggers the imagination. Take General Electric, for example. Its total assets are $543 million, over $500 million. That's a lot of money. Yes, General Electric is a big company. Yet here it is in scale as one of 13 industrial companies, including U.S. Steel, which are controlled by the J.P. Morgan interests. Plus 12 utility companies, including American Telephone and Telegraph. Plus 8 railroads. Plus 3 major banks. Morgan interests control a total of $31 billion through these companies alone. $31 billion. It's so much money, it's impossible to think of it. Suppose it was laid out in $100 bills. By the end of a block of, say, 400 feet, you could pick up $78,000 in about 15 minutes. But to pick up the rest of the $31 billion, you'd have to walk clear around the Earth 1¼ times, and it would take you 400 years on a 40-hour week. Yes, the Morgan Group is powerful. It took the power of the United States government even to find out these facts. And since our taxes paid for this investigation, let's get our money's worth. Morgan is the largest group. Then there is the strong Kuhn-Loeb group. The Mellon interests, which have Westinghouse. DuPont with General Motors. And then there is Rockefeller. And 3 other groups, making up a grand total of some $82 billion assets in 1945, exclusive of government-owned plants, which they are now busy buying up cheap. These assets represent control over plants, railways, banks, and most important of all, jobs. 8 groups dispose of over 30% of all the assets in the United States. These 8 groups operate through a screen of 106 corporations, and some idea of their power can be had by seeing in scale how many firms own the rest. These 250,000 corporations exclude the million-odd small businesses in America. 8 groups control the American economy not only because of their concentration of wealth, but through their strategic ownership of basic industries. Every consumer and every businessman in America hands over a percentage of their earnings to these 8 groups, often without knowing it. This is what is meant by big business. This is what is meant by their control of American economy. Big business is international. There were similar groups in Germany, Japan, Italy, England, France, Holland, Belgium, Spain, and smaller countries. Through colonial rule or subservient governments, they controlled raw materials and markets in most of the world. This is the big league in world business. Its name is imperialism. It leads to war, as Hitler's story shows. For Hitler had a dream that his big business should dominate the world. He called his dream the New Order. Foreign big business was weakened during the war, and today American big business is the strongest. And they have a dream to dominate the world. They called their dream the American Century. The American Century means the century of big business instead of the century of the common people. No, things weren't what Bill had hoped for, in more ways than one. Bill's kid brother was still in China. His letters all read the same.
I'm fed up with this mess. We're still training the Chinese. Thought the war was over. This place gives me the creeps. Kids hang around our garbage cans, waiting for us to clean our plates, while their own government big shots take their cut of UNRWA supplies. What a deal. What goes on here?
Bill was wondering too. He believed in the war as a great struggle against the enemies of the common people, But he was finding out now that not all his enemies were on the Axis side. Strange facts about the war were coming out. In 1942, we wanted to land in France. But Churchill pressed for a campaign in Italy to save Britain's interests in the Mediterranean. Still playing power politics, he pulled troops out of Italy and sent them off to Greece to fight on the king's side against the people.
Diversion of 8th Army units to meet the political crisis in Greece disrupted our plans. The Germans had time to refit and strengthen their forces.
American lives were sacrificed to pay for a Greek government the people didn't want. All this apparently seems quite normal to Congress. Roosevelt's old enemies are again making government policy. They are the friends of big business, the men who believe in atomic diplomacy. The president himself shared the platform at an American university with Winston Churchill when he called for an Anglo-American alliance against Russia. Is this what millions of men died for?
But we of the United Nations are not making all this sacrifice of human effort and human lives to return to the kind of world we had after the last World War.
When Bill walked on the picket line the morning of January 15th, he was fighting for the decent standard of living that Roosevelt had pledged in the Economic Bill of Rights. The right to a job, to food and clothing, to fair prices, to protection against monopolies, the right to a decent home, medical care, a good education, the right to economic security. Bill fought for this new Bill of Rights as part of a mighty CIO struggle against the economic royalists. At the National Labor Management Conference, CIO President Philip Murray had sought tenaciously for recognition of the need for wage increases and of price control. Within a week, 1.5 million CIO workers were on strike. Auto, steel, Packard, communication, farm equipment, all fighting for a decent America. Lynn, Massachusetts, Ontario, California, Fairmont, West Virginia, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Jersey City, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Schenectady, Philadelphia, plant after plant, town after town, from coast to coast, the picket lines grew. Big lines and little. The machinery of strike committees functioned like clockwork, and the UE strike was solid 100%. In bitter January weather, there was fire for cold hands and feet, hot coffee and hot food for weary union fighters. The support of the strike was magnificent. There were plenty of attempts at provocation, but the picket lines were solid. The most significant phase of the UE strike was the tremendous community support it received. Dozens of mayors and dozens of city governments and dozens of congressmen supported those on strike. Typical was Lynn, Massachusetts, where the mayor sent a letter to GE.
I have talked personally with many of the workers. I have listened to their arguments, and I must say that their demands seem reasonable and just under all present-day circumstances.
The townspeople agreed with the mayor. Druggist Flaherty offered free medicines. The shoemaker offered shoe repairs. In fact, the whole community pitched in. This was something new for a GE town.
Adequate buying power is necessary to sustain the business life of the community. to enable property owners to pay taxes, to enable a city to conduct its municipal government on the basis of solvency and service.
The interests of the community and the interests of the workers were one. The justice of the union position was obvious. The companies could not conceal the truth. The union waged one of the greatest publicity campaigns in trade union history. It used ads, radio, records, and sound trucks. The UE beat the companies at their own game. The people could not be divided. The union could not be isolated. Its strike machinery stood up, and Jim Matley's national director of organization for once was satisfied.
When the companies failed to isolate us from the communities, they tried to smash us by the use of injunctions. Injunctions is the most reactionary weapon used by employers to break a strike. They have been repudiated by the American people and by Congress through the Norris LaGuardia Act. But employers use the injunctions to mobilize the police power of the state to undermine and break a strike. Even the Army and the Navy has been used for the purpose of breaking strike. An injunction is an illegitimate offspring of an undemocratic government and a reactionary employer in the name of law and order. It leads to violence, as in the case of Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia on March 1st, an ominous concentration of police shadowed the peaceful picketing and parading of UE members. An injunction had been granted against picketing. The company thought it had won a major step towards breaking the strike. UE locals in Philadelphia and Camden organized a protest parade, an orderly parade, headed by their country's flag, in the hands of a veteran of the German campaign. To the tune of the Star-Spangled Banner, while everyone stood at attention. But when the parade started, trouble began. The flag was torn from the hands of the veteran. The veteran was beaten. It was said later, in excuse, that the police lost their heads. They certainly lost them in an organized manner. This is the result of having irresponsible officials in the city halls, the state capitals, and in Washington. When violence failed, the companies gave in. Big business was stopped. The strikes were won and the contracts were safe in the hands of Secretary-Treasurer Julius Emspach.
Yes, big business was stopped. With the CIO in the forefront, labor and the people won the first round. But big business is not giving up. It is starting a new offensive. Prices have zoomed. What we won in the strikes is being stolen back from us through a big business Congress. Where are we going? Well, you know what a company town looks like. With this Congress re-elected, we'll have a company country with company housing, company stores, company unions, company discrimination. We'll have unemployment at home, and ultimately, war abroad. There is only one answer. Vote and vote right. Canvassing, registering, voting. Sustained organized effort of every local in its community. Community political action will hold the gains of the picket lines. Millions of enlightened ballots must be cast. We must elect a progressive Congress. Prosperity and even peace itself depend upon it. But behind each ballot is a person, a woman, a man.
Bill Turner went to town to save the OPA. It was little help. The Tafts and the Byrds, the Hoffmans and the Rankins, big business Republicans and Democrats and their flunkies from the South, they fixed the OPA, like they fixed FEPC, like they fixed full employment, like they fixed minimum wages, like they fixed the Hobbs bill, like they fixed too many things in that year of disgrace, 1946. And Bill could see rising prices ahead. And he could see more strikes. And he was grim.
That this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Bill is going to do some fixing of his own. He smells November coming. He even smells the date. November 5th.
Wow, you actually watched to the end? Holy shit. You're seeing me right now. You watched to the end.
I think a lot of people do end up watching this far, but like we never have this outro, so it's always so strange, like when all the film's end, then it just stops. I always try to add like a little bit of black so people can at least say goodbye in the comment section, but like I guess at this point, like we just want to say thanks. yeah, keep up the good fight. Be safe out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we love
Be
you all.
safe. Give to bail funds.
Yes, definitely.
Give people the platform to talk and listen.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And again, thanks for joining.
Bye.